when we look at fear, most of you have heard me talk about where it resides and where it comes from. I mean, what it is. And I challenge people to see that it is anything other than a future belief. You know, something that happens in the future, something that we create on our own. It's just mind-made. It's a mental concept. It's nothing real except for within us. It seems like it's happening in the moment, like PTSD, for example. Driving down the freeway. Let's say you're driving down the freeway and it's raining, and it's kind of the windshield wipers are going and it's raining. It starts coming down really hard and the windshield starts fogging up and you can't see. There's some fear that's coming up, but when we look at it really almost like on a microscopic level, we see that it's still like something could happen. You know, something can happen here, you know, but it's not happening now, but we project into the future. Like it might happen in the future. And so again, I challenge to find, you know, people to find any fear that is actually real, except for based in the future. Now, something could happen in the past, and then when we think about it, it can bring up fear because we think it's going to happen again. So it's like, okay, if this is the past, I have to make sure I get this on the video here. Like this is the past and this is the future. We think of something that happened to us or somebody else in the past, and it goes right through the present moment and into the future. Because in the present moment there is no fear, you know, in this presence. Like when we are having a good meditation practice, if we're resting in the presence, there's no fear there. If fear comes up in our meditation, it's not that we're doing our meditation wrong, it's just that we are allowing the mind to drift off. Wander, or the monkey mind's getting the best of us or something, whatever we want to call it. Yeah. And, you know, to coincide with that, anger or ill will, that kind of thing is found in the past. You know, something that has happened in the past, something that has gone wrong. So even a collective fear, I mean, that's a really good example of something that isn't real. You know, the collective fear of, you know, a virus or something like this that people are, you know, thinking about and imagining how, you know, how horrible it could be or whatever. They're, you know, like, why is there no toilet paper at Costco? You know, these things, you know. And it is just, it's widespread panic. I mean, it can be widespread panic. It isn't at this point, but so I really encourage people to see where their fears come from, or where fear comes from in general. And we are creating it, making it up as we go, you know. Was it McCarthy that said the only thing we have to fear is fear itself?
Roosevelt.
Who?
Was it FDR who said that? I think it was Roosevelt.
Franklin?
FDR.
Franklin Roosevelt? FDR? Sure it was, yeah, I know that, yeah. Yeah. But it's really true. There is no fear out there, but if we impose fear upon others or allow fear to take over us, then it can be a problem. I know people that live in fear a lot. They're fearful of travel, not just because of, you know, modern day things or anything like that, but they're afraid to leave their home because they like that security in their home. You know, that people. I know people living in South Dakota that have just barely left South Dakota. And that can be sad, because that's where I'm from. I know that it can be sad to not leave South Dakota because of the security, the security of it. They don't want to get on an airplane, or they don't want to adventure out and see new things, stuff like that. So fear is something that we create. That doesn't mean that it's going to necessarily make it dissolve, by having this understanding. But we have to really take a look within the body and really see, be able to identify these different kinds of fear. Because fear will show up in the body. And sometimes it can come up very fast. And that's why it seems like it's very present. Like the driving situation. If somebody cuts us off, or like a close accident or something like that, we feel it in the body. It's like frightening. And again, then we calm ourselves down thinking, well, nothing happened. But the reason that it came up so quickly is because it was seemed like imminent danger at the time. Like it's still not happening in the present moment, but it could happen very, very fast. It's still future-based. And so it's still, whatever happens, it's mind-made.
You can even feel, I know I can feel the chemicals, like if I'm very in tune with my body, and if I have a near miss driving, I can actually feel like a chemical change in my head, like a literal sensation, like the chemical cocktail. I recognize that it's changed. That's a really bizarre feeling, but it's so real.
It's hard to create that on its own without actually having that fear. But if a person can, then they have something to work with. I mean, come close to it. I mean, if you can create that fear, recreating an accident or something like that, and the fear a person might have of driving that was based on a traffic accident, and then recreating that, stepping into that again and again, and bringing that up in the body, and then you start desensitizing from that eventually.
Hopefully.
It can work. It can work. But the body is really the clue. And then Buddha knew that too. When in meditation, in the Satipatthana Sutra, he talked about, almost all that sutra is about the body, in meditation. It's supposed to be about body, feelings, states, and dharmas, or the mind objects, but he spent a lot of time on the body because the body is so gross, and it's something that we can use in meditation and learn from, and in daily life too, like that fear, how that fear feels within us, and that type of thing.
When I sit down at home to meditate, my dog is right there, and she is there until I get up, and it's amazing.
Yeah, my dog was like that too.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. That was her favorite time.
Yeah. It's because she's really close, and it's just amazing. Because when I got her, she'd been really, really, really abused, and so it took her about a year to get over it, but she's still
I'm
good.
sure. She likes that serenity and that.
Mm-hmm.
She feels that energy.
Yeah, so I've had her about 6 years now, so she's good. But
I think children are like that too.
I do too.
Even other adults are like that. We all respond to each other's energy.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we fill a room like this.
Mm-hmm.
Usually.
So we'll do a little bit of a, I'd like to do kind of a little bit of a longer meditation. Is the temperature okay in here? I turned it up, just because of the dampness, from the rain and everything. I turned up the temperature.
Are you okay?
Yeah.
I have a sweater on. I know okay. Somebody was wearing a t-shirt.
I'm fine.
She's got a blue jacket
Yeah,
here.
I got a jacket here if I need it.
Can I
Okay.
borrow it?
No.
Can't share clothes. Coronavirus.
Coronavirus.
You guys are really
Oh,
nice.
gosh.
We are.
So I'll guide us through some of this. I'll talk a little bit about the subject, or the invitation tonight, which is to look at fear and see where it comes from, see how it arrives, where it goes, what causes it, all of that. Okay? Closing the eyes. Just bring your awareness to the body for a few moments and see how it feels. And in doing so, notice whether the mind is present or if it's in the past or in the future. And now bring your attention to the breath for a few moments. And really try to bring yourself into the present moment by focusing on the breath. Notice that there's no anger or fear. No restless or worry or desire. So if we were sitting in this quiet room and we heard a loud noise, we might be startled temporarily. We'd be questioning what that noise was, why it was there. And our reaction time can happen so quickly. And it can be frightening. And it seems very, very much in the present moment that this happens. And there's a part of it that does. The sound happens, the reaction happens, but the actual fear is based on our calculating and our cognition about the sound. Because we all have experienced meditations where there's been a loud sound and it has not affected us whatsoever. So the acronym of fear, false evidence that appears real, is a very good acronym. The fear that we place upon ourselves and the fear that others place upon us is literally mind-made. And if we get an opportunity to see that firsthand and understand it, in the moment, that fear wouldn't be there. It's just that it happens so quickly and we feel it within the body. There's something that we accept. Something about the fear that we accept as being real. And it doesn't have to be all of it. Just a part of a past experience. Something that just simply very lightly triggers the fear is enough to set it off. And then it's like a feedback loop, that we're fearful of the fear. We don't understand it. But any kind of fear that we have, if we look at it straight on, we understand that it is resting and coming from past or future beliefs, future experiences that we think and believe will happen. And so in this meditation, I invite us to actually take a look at our fears. Possibly we don't have any that we can readily notice. If that's the case, take a look at the fears that we might have had in the past, such as a child, or something that happened to us, traffic accident or something like this. We can actually benefit by seeing these from a different angle, like a third party or uninvolved party, and seeing these things come about and noticing the reactions and the feelings within the body as we replay these memories. But we're not trying to conjure up the past, we're trying to feel something within the body in the present moment. And then we pass through that present moment into the future, realizing that this hasn't happened yet. And it likely will never happen. That it's just mind-made. And that's what fear is. Something created by the mind. May each one of us and all beings be well, happy, and peaceful. May no harm come to us. May no difficulties come to us. And may we all meet with spiritual and worldly success. And may we have the patience, courage, and the understanding to meet and overcome any problems and any difficulties that we might face. Thank you. So the theme tonight was to look at our fears, or look at fear itself. I mean, it doesn't have to be our fear, because we don't want to call ownership to these things anyway, because they're false. You know, the fears that we have are not real. They seem like they might be real. Especially when, for example, I mean, we can come up with many different examples that really kind of challenge this theory or this fact. I call it a fact that fear is based in the future. And one of them would be childhood dreams, nightmares, or traumatic dreams for a child. When they wake up in the middle of the night crying, you know, wanting to crawl into mommy's bed or something like that, you know, I mean, small children, they get fearful, you know, and they're fearful of something, you know, like the boogeyman, or, you know, something that they saw as a nightmare. And seemingly, you know, it happened at that time. They're unconscious. There's a subconscious taking a look and watching all of this. You know, the dream consciousness is really a subconscious aspect. And then they wake up and they feel that it's real, that it's something that could happen. But it's not happening. It's not happening in the moment, but they still feel that it can happen. So they get fearful. And, you know, it's very common and very natural, and fear is, you know, it's really our fight or flight response in many ways. So it does serve a purpose for us. I mean, when we see a saber-toothed tiger coming after us, first of all we think, well, this is strange because there's no saber-toothed tigers, right? But if we if there's fear behind that, it's actually serving us a purpose. You know, we're allowing the species to survive, you know, by being afraid of this saber-toothed tiger, or if it's a lion or whatever it might be, you know. So we're keeping the species alive by having this fear. But the message here is to be able to look at this fear, understand it, and really understand whether it's actually real, whether it's necessary, and whether it's something that we can take care of, you know, look through. What's the most fearful thing for people? What's the greatest fear that we have?
Death.
Probably death, yeah.
Sickness.
Which is related to death. Pain, you know, a lot of times people say, I'm not afraid of death, I just don't want to go through that pain, you know. And that's not necessarily going to be any pain when we die. You know, it could just be like that. And so if we clear away that fear of death, it's really liberating. And that's that spiritual process in us, that spirituality that we can find. I got an interview coming up. Well, the interview was done a while ago, but it's an iPod or an podcast. Thank you. That's coming out tomorrow, and I'll get it out so people can listen to it. But it's about spirituality. The first question they asked is, "What is spirituality to me?" And I have no idea what I said, but they reminded me today because they showed me what I read, because it's in an advertisement, and it was something along the lines of spirituality. If somebody asked me what spirituality was, I would ask them, or what spirituality is and how it feels. I would have them relate it to love. How does it feel to be in love? You know, how does it feel for us to be loved? And that's the same thing with spirituality. It's actually a feeling within that we can experience. And so when we have those moments of spirituality. Some people have those moments all the time. Some people just have them like a moment of mindfulness or something. But it's actually like we are taken care of. It's like we're embraced somehow, like we're being loved. And I think it's very important to remember that, because when we do have that spirituality, when we are embraced, when we feel like we're taken care of, we don't have that fear anymore. Momentarily, it might come back, but for us to lose that fear, and probably the biggest fear, as we mentioned, is death. And to lose that fear of death, the greatest one of all, is very, very liberating for us. And sometimes we fear the death of another, not necessarily us, but the death of a loved one or something like that. Like a mother, the death of her children, is horrible. It's not supposed to be that way, right? But it's the same thing. It depends on what we believe is the result of that death, what happens after that death. But we have to always keep in mind that death, that fear of death, is something that's going to happen in the future. Death will happen to all of us. It has to. But it doesn't have to happen the way that we believe it will. It doesn't have to be painful if we believe it might be painful or uncomfortable or at the wrong time or just a nuisance for somebody, or any of these things. None of it has to be that way. It can be a very beautiful thing, actually. Especially if we don't fear it. There's I can't remember the teacher's name, but he said that dying, this big fear of dying, is much, much easier if we just accept it, just allow it. And he says it's like if you are in a chair, like one of these chairs we have here, and and somebody says, "Come on with me," and you're hanging on to that chair for dear life. It can be painful, you're hanging on, not ready to go, and that person's pulling you out of that chair. Come on, let's go. It's a big struggle, But if we go, okay, I'm ready, you just pull out of the chair very easily, and it's just lickety split, as they say. So we can look at all of our fears that way. I mean, the big ones, the small ones, losing something, losing our money, losing a possession, losing a relationship, or whatever it might be. Losing our car keys, I don't know, whatever fears we might have. Attachment.
It's all the attachments.
All the attachments, yeah. And losing our health,
Again.
another attachment. Our life is attachment. It's all attachments. And of course, in Buddhism, this fella here, he said that's what causes the problems for us. So the more we can point that out to ourselves, the better off and more liberated we can be while we are walking around the earth and enjoying this stuff.
I was saying, I believe that resistance, period, covers like all the hindrance.
Yeah.
When you're trying to hold on, like she said, attachments, when you're resisting letting go of an attachment, a person, a place, a thing, an object, the fact that you may die, so life, that attachment, that resistance to really being free and being in your spirit, that does cause all those hindrances.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's in the mind.
Exactly. Yeah, it's the resistance. You hit the nail on the head with the hammer with that word, resistance, because we have to, once these things are accepted, then it's gone. I mean, it just diminishes. It falls apart. Yeah. If there's
But now we feel like you're constantly swimming against the flow.
Exactly.
It's like it's a struggle,
Tiring.
tiring, exhausting.
yeah,
That's how most of us live our daily lives, trying to, for sure,
yeah,
and having an awareness to not do that.
And of course, our views on death will impact our fearfulness about it. Thich Nhat Hanh talks about, one of the greatest fears is that those who fear that death is just annihilation. Like that's a tremendous fear for people that
It's violent,
there's
right?
nothing,
Yeah.
you know, or somebody who might fear, lived a very Catholic or Christian life, and they're afraid they didn't do everything quite right, and they're afraid to let go because they're afraid they're going to be punished for those bad deeds. So we're very tied into those beliefs in terms of the level of fear that we feel. It's obvious, but
Yeah.
The unknown,
Yep.
not knowing what is going to happen after.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot.
That's the biggest.
That's another thing we have to give up, is that
Yes.
need to know all the
Yeah.
time.
Right.
Yeah.
It's okay.
It's okay, yeah. But it's a cultural and thing too. We're all raised in certain beliefs that make us fearful.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a whole industry to make us fearful. You know?
But we just have to be more conscious, and if we can, I think we can, or more aware of what's happening, and again, I think noticing the fear within us, how it actually, we can feel it within the body, and tune into that, and actually know where it comes from, what it is, and really look at it as being something that's set in the future. That it comes up, we see it, we believe it. We don't have to believe it. We don't have to believe any of it. We can, and accepting is such a big part of it all. Accepting we did a death meditation here, 4 weeks ago, 5 weeks or something like that. Yeah, and the idea behind that is to lose that fear of death, and to be kind of settle into it and understand, how it would be, to die. Some people take it to a far extent. They see the people come to their funeral, and how it would be and all of that. And, but again, the message here is just to understand our fears, understand what fear is, and be okay.
Picturing your own funeral, that could be an ego exercise as well. Like,
It
hey,
is,
see,
yeah.
I'm popular, I have all these people who showed up.
Or what if nobody showed up?
That could be an exercise in your ego too.
Yeah.
Hey, this is great. People said nice things.
So when you're driving home tonight, and if it's raining, don't be fearful.
Okay.
And don't be fearful of any viruses out there. That's really unseen fear, literally unseen.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Enjoy your evening.